Have you ever wondered what's really happening behind the scenes of the conflict in the Middle East that started in late 2023? We see the headlines, we see the heartbreak, but there's a much deeper story about international relationships and power. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the role one major world power has played, a role that has shaped the entire course of this devastating conflict. We'll explore the diplomatic moves, the military support, and the key decisions made in the halls of power that have had life-or-death consequences on the ground. It's a complex issue, and understanding it requires looking at the facts. So, which nation has been the most significant international player in this crisis? The answer, unequivocally, is the United States. From the very beginning, the U.S. provided what can be described as unwavering support for Israel. This wasn't just a statement of solidarity. It was a comprehensive package of diplomatic backing, military aid, and strategic actions that have profoundly influenced the conflict's duration and intensity. Let's start with the diplomatic side of things. This is where we see the most public and powerful demonstrations of support. The main stage for this is the United Nations Security Council, the body responsible for maintaining international peace and security. In the weeks and months following the initial attacks, multiple resolutions were brought before the Council. What were these resolutions calling for? Primarily, a humanitarian ceasefire. The goal was to pause the fighting to allow life-saving aid to enter Gaza, help civilians caught in the crossfire, and create a space for negotiations. However, time and again, these resolutions were met with a veto from the United States, a veto from any of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States stops a resolution in its tracks. The U.S. used this power multiple times, arguing that the proposed resolutions were not balanced, didn't adequately condemn the initial attacks by Hamas, or would hinder Israel's right to defend itself. For example, a Brazilian-drafted resolution in October 2023 called for humanitarian pauses but was vetoed by the U.S. later. A resolution put forward by the United Arab Emirates in December, which had widespread support from other nations and humanitarian organizations, also met the same fate. The U.S. position was consistent. Any ceasefire that was untied to the release of hostages held by Hamas was a non-starter, while the U.S. did eventually abstain from a vote in March 2024. Allowing a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire to pass its earlier vetoes had a significant impact, effectively giving the military campaign more time to proceed without a binding international call to stop. This diplomatic shield at the UN was a clear message to the world. The United States stood firmly with Israel, even when it meant standing apart from many of its allies and the broader international community. Now, let's talk about military support, because diplomacy is only one piece of the puzzle. The military relationship between the United States and Israel is deep-rooted and has been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East for decades. In this conflict, that support went into overdrive. Immediately after the October 7th attacks, the U.S. began a massive airlift of military aid to Israel. We're talking about huge cargo planes delivering advanced weaponry. This included precision-guided munitions, bombs, artillery shells, and other equipment essential for a modern military campaign. The flow of weapons was swift and substantial, ensuring that Israel's military had the resources it needed to conduct its operations in Gaza. One of the most talked about pieces of this military aid puzzle is the Iron Dome. You've probably heard of it. It's a remarkable air defense system designed to intercept and destroy short-range rockets and artillery shells fired from just a few miles away. The Iron Dome has been a game-changer for Israeli civilian defense, and it was co-developed and is largely funded by the United States. During this conflict, the system was working overtime, as thousands of rockets were fired from Gaza. The Iron Dome was credited with saving countless lives by shooting them down mid-air. To keep the system functioning, it needs a constant supply of interceptor missiles, which are expensive and complex to manufacture. The U.S. made it a top priority to replenish Israel's stock. Congress approved billions in emergency funding specifically for this purpose, ensuring that the protective shield provided by the Iron Dome would not fail due to a shortage of ammunition. This resupply of interceptors was a critical form of direct military assistance. Beyond the Iron Dome, the U.S. also moved significant military assets into the region. 2 aircraft carrier strike groups were deployed to the eastern Mediterranean. This was a powerful show of force. The stated purpose was to deter other regional actors, like Iran or Hezbollah, in Lebanon, from getting involved in escalating the conflict into a wider regional war. It was a clear signal that the U.S. was not just a distant supplier, but an active presence, ready to protect its allies' interests. So why does the United States provide such comprehensive support? The reasons are layered and complex, involving history, shared political values, and strategic interests. For decades, successive U.S. administrations, from both political parties, have viewed a strong and secure Israel as a vital interest in a volatile region. Israel is seen as a stable democratic partner, This long-standing alliance means that when Israel is perceived to be under threat, the default US response is one of robust support. Politically, there's also strong bipartisan support for Israel within the U.S. Congress. Pro-Israel lobbying groups are influential, and many American voters, particularly within certain religious communities, hold a deep-seated belief in supporting the nation. This domestic political reality makes it very difficult for any U.S. president to take a different course. However, this policy is not without its critics, both at home and abroad. Many have argued that by providing what they call a blank check of support, the U.S. has enabled a military campaign that has resulted in a staggering humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The high number of civilian casualties, the displacement of millions of people, and the destruction of infrastructure have led to accusations that the U.S. is complicit in the devastation. Human rights organizations and many UN officials have repeatedly called for more pressure on Israel to protect civilians and adhere to international humanitarian law. They argue that the U.S., as Israel's main backer, has the unique leverage to demand more restraint, but has been reluctant to use it effectively. The U.S. administration, for its part, has stated that it has been working behind the scenes, urging Israeli officials to minimize civilian harm and allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza. There have been reports of tense conversations and disagreements between U.S. and Israeli leaders over the conduct of the war. But publicly, the message of support has remained strong and consistent. In summary, when we ask who provided the key diplomatic and military backing to Israel during this conflict, the answer is clear. The United States shielded Israel from international pressure at the United Nations by vetoing ceasefire resolutions. It supplied a continuous and massive flow of military aid, from bombs and ammunition to the crucial interceptors for the Iron Dome, and it projected its own military power in the region to deter a wider war. This support has been a defining feature of the conflict, shaping its trajectory and its tragic human cost. It's a policy rooted in a long history of alliance and strategic calculation, but it's also one that has generated significant controversy and debate around the world. Understanding this dynamic is essential to understanding the full picture of what has been happening in Israel and Gaza. It shows how the decisions made thousands of miles away can have an immediate and powerful impact on the ground. Thanks for watching. This is a topic with many different perspectives, and it's important to keep learning and stay informed. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world. See you next time.